Fireside Tailes with Wolfgang. Episode 19. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions YouTube channel, CAPS Media Television Channel 6, KPPQ-LP Ventura at 104.1 FM, and on the KPPQ Podcast Network. Greetings and salutations. I'm Hunter Ackerman, here to read some classic literature for you and my beastly feline companion Wolfgang. So Wolfus, what do you want to hear? Here we go. John Donne. It was a short poem. It was a short poem by John Donne. I can remember quite specifically and clearly why I read this poem. And it is because of Ernest Hemingway. You shall see soon why. This poem... Wow, this poem was published in 1624 by John Donne. This is called No Man is an Island. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sinned to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Yeah. Of course, Metallica wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls. But I have no reason to think that they were in any way associated with English poetry. They were probably just like taking a profound sounding Ernest Hemingway title. This is Defeat by Khalil Gibran. Defeat. My defeat, my solitude and my aloofness. You are dearer to me than 1,000 triumphs and sweeter to my heart than all world glory. Defeat, my self-knowledge and my defiance. Through you, I know that I am yet young and swift of foot, and not to be trapped by withering laurels, and in you I have found aloneness and the joy of being shunned and scorned. Defeat, my shining sword and shield, in your eyes I have read that to be enthroned is to be enslaved, and to be understood is to be leveled down, and to be grasped is but to reach one's fullness, and like a ripe fruit, to fall and be consumed. Defeat, my bold companion, you shall hear my songs and my cries and my silences, but none but you shall speak to me of the beating of wings and the urging of seas and of mountains that burn in the night, and you alone shall climb my steep and rocky soul. Defeat, my my deathless courage, you and I shall laugh together with the storm, and together we shall dig graves for all that die in us. And we shall stand in the sun with a will, and we shall be dangerous. I love that one for the end. We shall stand in the sun with a will, and we shall be dangerous. That is, yeah. This is called The Magic Shop by H.G. Wells. I'd seen the magic shop from afar several times. I had passed it once or twice, a shop of alluring little objects, magic balls, magic hens, wonderful cones, ventriloquist dolls, the material of the basket trick, packs of cards that looked all right, and all that sort of thing, but never had I thought of going in until one day, almost without warning, Gip hauled me by my finger right up to the window and so conducted himself that there was nothing for it but to take him in. I had not thought the place was there, to tell the truth, a modest-sized frontage in Regent Street between the picture shop and the place where the chicks run about just out of patent incubators, but there it was, sure enough. I had fancied it was down nearer the circus or round the corner in Oxford Street, or even in Holborn, but always over the way and just a little inaccessible it had been, with something of the mirage of its position. But here it was, now, quite indisputably, and the fat end of Gip's pointing finger made a noise upon the glass. "If I was rich," said Gip, dabbing a finger at the disappearing egg, "I'd buy myself that, and that," which was the crying baby, very human, "and that," which was a mystery and called, so a neat card asserted, "Buy one and astonish your friends." "Anything," said Gip, "will disappear under one of those cones. I've read about it in a book." "And there, Dada, is the vanishing halfpenny. Only they've put it this way up so as we can't see how it's done." Gip, dear boy, inherits his mother's breeding, and he did not propose to enter the shop or worry in any way. Only, quite unconsciously, he lugged my finger doorward, and he made his interest clear. It's not that scary a story. Did you have a nightmare already? What's up? We're just getting started. Oh yeah, by the way, Mama loves you. Told me to tell you. "That," he said, and pointed to the magic bottle. "If you had that," I said, at which promising inquiry he looked up with suddenly radiance. "I could show it to Jessie," he said, thoughtful as ever of others. "It's less than 100 days to your birthday, Gibbles," I said, and laid my hand on the door handle. Gip made no answer, but his grip tightened on my finger, and so we came into the shop. It was no common shop, this. It was a magic shop. And all the prancing precedence Gip would have taken in manner of mere toys was wanting. He left the burthen of the conversation to me. It was a little narrow shop, not very well lit, and the doorbell pinged again with a plaintive note as we closed it behind us. For a moment or so, we were alone and could glance about us. There was a tiger in papier-mâché on the glass case that covered the low counter, a grave, kind-eyed tiger that waggled his head in a methodical manner. There were several crystal spheres, a china hand holding magic cards, a stock of magic fish bowls in various sizes, and an immodest magic hat that shamelessly displayed its springs. On the floor were magic mirrors. One to draw you out long and thin, one to swell your head and vanish your legs, and one to make you short and fat like a draft. And while we were laughing at all of these, the shopman, I suppose, came in. At any rate, there he was behind the counter. A curious, sallow, dark man with one ear larger than the other and a chin like the toe cap of a boot. "What can we have the pleasure?" he said, spreading his long magic fingers on the glass case. And so, with a start, we were aware of him. "I want," I said, "to buy my little boy a few simple tricks." "I'll let you demand," he asked. "Mechanical? Domestic?" "Anything amusing?" said I. "Ah," said the shopman, and scratched his head for a moment as if thinking. Then, quite distinctly, he drew from his head a glass ball. "Something in this way," he said, and held it up. The action was unexpected. I'd seen the trick done at entertainments endless times before. It's part of the common stock of conjurers, but I had not expected it here. "That's good," I said with a laugh. "Isn't it?" said the shopman. Gip stretched out his disengaged hand to take this object and found merely a blank palm. "It's in your pocket," said the shopman. And there it was. How much will that be?" I asked. "We make no charge for glass balls," said the shopman politely. "We get them," he picked one out of his elbow as he spoke, "free." He produced another from the back of his neck and laid it beside its predecessor on the counter. Gip regarded his glass ball sagely, then directed a look of inquiry at the two on the counter, and finally brought his round-eyed scrutiny to the shopman, who smiled. "You may have those too," said the shopman, "and, if you don't mind, one from my mouth. So." Gip counseled me mutely for a moment, then in profound silence put away the 4 balls, resumed my reassuring finger, and nerved himself for the next event. "We get all our smaller tricks in that way," the shopman remarked. I laughed in the manner of one who subscribes to a jest. "Instead of going to the wholesale shop," I said. Of course, it's cheaper." "In a way," the shopman said, "though we pay in the end. But not so heavily as people suppose. Our larger tricks and our daily provisions and all the other things we want, we get out of that hat. And, sir, if you'll excuse my saying it, there isn't a wholesale shop, not for genuine magic goods, sir. I don't know if you noticed our inscription, the genuine magic shop." He drew a business card from his cheek and handed it to me. "Genuine," he said, with his finger on the word, and added, "There is absolutely no deception, sir." He seems to be carrying out the joke pretty thoroughly, I thought. He turned to Gip with a smile of remarkable affability. You are the right sort of boy." I was surprised at his knowing that, because in the interests of discipline, we keep it rather a secret even at home, but Gip received it in an unflinching silence, keeping a steadfast eye on him. "It's only the right sort of boy gets through that doorway." And, as if by way of illustration, there came a rattling at the door, and a squeaking little voice could be faintly heard. "Nah, I warn you. Don't go in there. I want to go in there, Dad. I want to go in there. Yeah!" And then the accents of a downtrodden parent urging consolations and propitiations. "It's locked, Edward," he said. "But it isn't," said I. "It is, sir," said the shopman. "Always for that sort of child." And as he spoke, we had a glimpse of the other youngster, a little white face, pallid from sweet eating and over-sepid food and distorted by evil passions, a ruthless little egotist, pawing at the enchanted pain. "It's no good, sir," said the shopman, as I moved with my natural helpfulness doorward, and presently the spoilt child was carried off, howling. "How do you manage that?" I said, breathing a little more freely. "Magic," said the shopman, with a careless wave of the hand. And behold, sparks of colored fire flew out of his fingers and vanished into the shadows of the shop. "You were saying," he said, addressing himself to Gip, "before you came in that you would like one of our Buy One and Astonish Your Friends boxes." Gip, after a gallant effort, said, "Yeah, it's in your pocket." And leaning over the counter, he really had an extraordinarily long body. This amazing person produced the article in the customary conjurer's manner. "Paper," he said, and took a sheet out of the empty hat with the springs. "String." And behold, his mouth was a string box from which he drew an unending thread, which, when he had tied his parcel, he bit off, and it seemed to me he swallowed the ball of string. And then he lit a candle at the nose of one of the ventriloquist's dummies, stuck one of his fingers, which had become sealing wax red, into the flame, and so sealed the parcel. "Then there was the disappearing egg," he remarked, and produced one from within my coat breast and packed it, and also the crying baby, very human. I handed each parcel to Gip as it was ready, and he clasped them to his chest. He said very little, but his eyes were eloquent. The clutch of his arms was eloquent. He was the playground of unspeakable emotions. These, were real magics. Then, with a start, I discovered something moving about in my hat. Something soft and jumpy. I whipped it off, and a ruffled pigeon, no doubt a Confederate, dropped out and ran on the counter and went, I fancy, into a cardboard box behind the papier-mâché tiger. "Tut, tut," said the shopman, dexterously relieving me of my headdress. "Careless bird, and, as I live, nesting." He shook my hat and shook out into his extended hand 2 or 3 eggs, a large marble, a watch, about a half a dozen of the inevitable glass balls, and then crumpled, crinkled paper, more and more and more, talking all the time of the way in which people neglect to brush their hats, inside as well as out, politely, of course, but with a certain personal application. "All sorts of things accumulate, sir. Not you, of course, in particular. Nearly every customer. Astonishing what they carry about with them." The crumpled paper rose and billowed on the counter, more and more and more, until he was nearly hidden from us, until he was altogether hidden, and still his voice went on and on. "We, none of us, know what the fair semblance of a human being may conceal. sir. Are we all then no better than brushed exteriors, whitened sepulchres? His voice stopped, exactly like when you hit a neighbor's gramophone with a well-aimed brick. The same instant silence, and the rustle of the paper stopped, and everything was still. Have you done with my hat? I said after an interval. There was no answer. I stared at Gip, and Gip stared at me, and there were our distortions in the magic mirrors, looking very rum and grave and quiet. I think we'll go now, I said. Will you tell me how much all this comes to? I say, I said, on a rather louder note, I want the bill and my hat, please. It might have been a sniff from behind the paper pile. Let's look behind the counter, Gip, I said. He's making fun of us. I led Gip round the head-wagging tiger, and what do you think there was behind the counter? No one at all. Only my hat on the floor, and a common conjurer's lop-eared white rabbit lost in meditation and looking as stupid and crumpled as only a conjurer's rabbit can do. I resumed my hat, and the rabbit lolloped a lollop or so out of my way. Dada? Said Gip in a guilty whisper. What is it, Gip? Said I. I do like this shop, Dada. So should I said to myself. If the counter wouldn't suddenly extend itself to shut off from the door. But I didn't call Gip's attention to that. Pussy, he said with a hand out to the rabbit as it came lolloping past us. Pussy, do Gip a magic! And his eyes followed it as it squeezed through a door I had certainly not remarked a moment before. Then this door opened wider, and the man with one ear larger than the other appeared again. He was smiling still, but his eye met mine with something between amusement and defiance. You'd like to see our showroom, sir, he said, with an innocent suavity. Gip tugged my finger forward. I glanced at the counter and met the shopman's eye again. I was beginning to think that the magic was just a little too genuine. We haven't very much time, I said, but somehow we were inside the showroom before I could finish that. All goods of the same quality, said the shopman, rubbing his flexible hands together. And that is the best. Nothing in the place that isn't genuine magic and warranted thoroughly. Excuse me, sir. I felt him pull at something that clung to my coat sleeve, and then I saw he held a little wriggling red demon by the tail. The little creature bit and fought and tried to get at his hand, and in a moment he tossed it carelessly behind the counter. No doubt the thing was only an image of twisted India rubber, but for the moment... And his gesture was exactly that of a man who handles some petty, biting bit of vermin. I glanced at Gip, but Gip was looking at a magic rocking horse. I was glad he hadn't seen the thing. I said in an undertone and indicating Gip and the red demon with my eyes, you haven't many things like that about, have you? None of ours. Probably brought it with you, said the shopman. Also in an undertone, with a more dazzling smile than ever. Astonishing what people will carry about with them unawares. And then to Gip, do you see anything you fancy here? There were many things that Gip fancied there. He turned to this astonishing tradesman with mingled confidence and respect. "Is that a magic sword?" he said. "A magic toy sword. It neither bends, breaks, nor cuts the fingers. It renders the bearer invincible in battle against anyone under 18. Half a crown to 7 6 according to size. These panoplies on cards are for juvenile knights errant and very useful. Shield of safety, sandals of swiftness, a helmet of invisibility." "Oh, Daddy!" gasped Gip. I tried to find out what they cost, but the shopman did not heed me. He had got Gip now. He had got him away from my finger. He had embarked upon the exposition of all of his confounded stock, and nothing was going to stop him. Presently I saw with a qualm of distrust and something very like jealousy that Gip had hold of this person's finger as usual as he has hold of mine. No doubt the fellow was interesting, I thought, and had an interesting faked a lot of stuff. Really good faked stuff. Still. I wandered after them, saying very little, but keeping an eye on this prestidigital fellow. After all, Gip was enjoying it. And no doubt, when the time came to go, we should be able to go quite easily. It was a long, rambling place, that showroom, a gallery, broken up by stands and stalls and pillars with archways leading off to other departments, in which the queerest-looking assistants loafed and stared at one, and with perplexing mirrors and curtains. So perplexing, indeed, were these that I was presently unable to make out the door by which we had come in. The shopman showed Gip magic trains that ran without steam or clockwork, just as you set the signals, and then some very, very valuable boxes of soldiers that all came alive directly when you took off the lid and said, I myself haven't a very quick ear, and it was a tongue-twisting sound, but Gip, he had his mother's ear. He got it in no time. "Bravo!" said the shopman, putting the men back into the box unceremoniously and handing it to Gip. "Now," said the shopman, and in a moment, Gip had made them all alive again. "You'll take that box?" asked the shopman. "We'll take that box," said I, "unless you charge its full value, in which case it would need a trust magnate." "Dear heart, no!" And the shopman swept the little men back again, shut the lid, waved the box in the air, and there it was, in brown paper, tied up and with Gip's full name and address on the paper. The shopman laughed at my amazement. "This is the genuine magic," he said. "The real thing." "It's a little too genuine for my taste," I said again. After that, he fell to showing Gip tricks, odd tricks, and still odder the way they were done. He explained them, and he turned them inside out, and there was the dear little chap nodding his busy bit of a head in the sagest manner. I did not attend as well as I might. "Hey, presto!" said the magic shopman, and then would come the clear, small, "Hey, presto!" of the boy. But I was distracted by other things. It was being borne in upon me just how tremendously run this place was. It was, so to speak, inundated by a sense of rumness. There was something a little rum about the fixtures even, about the ceiling, about the floor, about the casually distributed chairs. I had a queer feeling that whenever I wasn't looking at them straight, they went askew and moved about and played a noiseless puss in the corner behind my back, and the cornice had a serpentine design with masks. Masks altogether too expressive for proper plaster. Then, abruptly, my attention was caught by one of the odd-looking assistants. He was some way off and evidently unaware of my presence. I saw a sort of three-quarter length of him over a pile of toys and through an arch, and he was leaning against a pillar in an idle sort of way, doing the most horrid thing with his features. The particular horrid thing he did was with his nose. He did it just as though he was idle and wanted to amuse himself. First of all, it was a short, blobby nose. Then, suddenly, he shot it out like a telescope, and then out of it flew and became thinner and thinner until it was like a long, red, flexible whip. Like a thing in a nightmare it was. He flourished it about and flung it forth as a fly fisher flings his line. My instant thought was that Gip mustn't see. I turned about, and there was Gip, quite preoccupied with the shopman, and thinking no evil. They were whispering together and looking at me. Gip was standing on a little stool, and the shopman was holding a big sort of drum in his hand. "Hide and seek, Dada!" cried Gip. "You're he!" And before I could do anything to prevent it, the shopman had clapped the big drum over him. I saw what was up directly. "Take that off!" I cried. "This instant! You'll frighten the boy! Take it off!" The shopman, with the unequal ears, did so without a word and held the big cylinder toward me to show its emptiness, and the little stool was vacant. In that instant, my boy had utterly disappeared. Perhaps, that sinister something that comes like a hand out of the unseen and grips your heart about. It takes your common self away and leaves you tense and deliberate, neither slow nor hasty, neither angry nor afraid. So it was with me. I came up to this grinning shopman and kicked his stool aside. "Stop this folly," I said. "Where's my boy?" "You see," he said, still displaying the drum's interior, "there's no deception." I put my hand out to grip him, and he eluded me by a dexterous movement. I snatched again, and he turned from me and pushed open a door to escape. "Stop!" I said, and he laughed, receding. I leapt after him into utter darkness. Thud. "Oi, Lord bless my heart, sir. I didn't see you coming, sir." I was in Regent Street, and I had collided with a decent-looking working man. And a yard away, perhaps, and looking a little perplexed with himself, was Gip. There was some sort of apology, and then Gip had turned and come to me with a bright little smile as though for a moment he had missed me. And he was carrying 4 parcels in his arm. He secured immediate possession of my finger. For the second, I was rather at a loss. I stared round to see the door of the magic shop, and behold, it was not there. There was no door, no shop, nothing. Only the common pilaster between the shop where they sell pictures and the window with the small chicks. I did the only thing possible in that mental tumult. I walked straight to the curbstone and held up my umbrella for a cab. "Hansoms," said Gip in a note of accumulating exultation. I helped him in, recalled my address with an effort and got in also. Something unusual proclaimed itself in my tailcoat pocket, and I felt and delivered a glass ball. With petulant expression, I flung it into the street. Gip said nothing. For a space, neither of us spoke. "Dada," said Gip at last. "That was a proper shop." I came round with that to the problem of just how the whole thing had seemed to him. He looked completely undamaged. So far, so good. He was neither scarred nor unhinged. He was simply tremendously satisfied with the afternoon's entertainment. And there, in his arms, were the 4 parcels. Confound it! What could be in them? I said, "Little boys can't go to shops like that every day." He received this with his usual stoicism, and for a moment I was sorry I was his father and not his mother, and so couldn't suddenly there, in public, in our hansom cab, kiss him. After all, I thought, the thing wasn't so very bad. But it was only when we opened the parcels that I really began to be reassured. 3 of them contained boxes of soldiers, quite ordinary lead soldiers, but of so good a quality as to make Gip altogether forget that originally these parcels had been magic tricks of the only genuine sort, and the 4th contained a kitten. A little living white kitten in excellent health and appetite and temper. I saw this unpacking with a sort of provisional relief. I hung about in the nursery for quite an unconscionable time. That happened 6 months ago. And now I'm beginning to believe it is all right. The kitten had only the magic natural to all kittens, and the soldiers seem as steady a company as any colonel could desire. And Gip? The intelligent parent will understand that I have to go cautiously with Gip. But I went so far as this one day. I said, "How would you like your soldiers to come alive, Gip, and march about by themselves?" "Mine do," said Gip. "I just have to say a word, I know, before I open the lid." "Then they march about alone." "Oh, quite, Dada. I shouldn't like 'em if they didn't do that." I displayed no unbecoming surprise, and since then, I've taken occasion to drop in upon him once or twice unannounced when the soldiers were about, but so far, I have never discovered them performing in anything like a magical manner. It's so difficult to tell. There's also a question of finance. I have an incurable habit of paying bills. I've been up and down Regent Street several times, looking for that shop. I'm inclined to think, indeed, that in that matter, honor is satisfied, and that, since Gip's name and address are also known to them, I may very well leave it to these people, whoever they may be, to send in their bill in their own time. The Last Leaf by O. Henry. In a small part of the city, west of Washington Square, the streets have gone wild. They turn in different directions. They're broken into small pieces called places. One street goes across itself 1 or 2 times. A painter once discovered something possible and valuable about this street. Suppose a painter had some painting materials for which he had not paid. Suppose he had no money. Suppose a man came to get the money. The man might walk down the street and suddenly meet himself coming back without having received a cent. This part of the city is called Greenwich Village. And to old Greenwich Village, the painters soon came. Here, they found rooms they like, with good light, and at a low cost. Sue and Johnsy lived at the top of a building with 3 floors. One of these women came from Maine, the other from California. They had met at a restaurant on 8th Street. There they discovered that they liked the same kind of art, the same kind of food, the same kind of clothes. So they decided to live and work together. That was in the spring. Toward winter, a cold stranger entered Greenwich Village. No one could see him. He walked around, touching one person here and another there with his icy fingers. He was a bad sickness. Doctors called him pneumonia. On the east side of the city, he hurried, touching many people, but in the narrow streets of Greenwich Village, he did not move so quickly. Mr. Pneumonia was not a nice old gentleman. A nice old gentleman would not hurt a weak little woman from California. But Mr. Pneumonia touched Johnsy with his cold fingers. She lay on her bed almost without moving, and she looked through the window at the wall of the house next to hers. One morning, the busy doctor spoke to Sue alone in the hall where Johnsy could not hear. "She has a very small chance," he said. "She has a chance if she wants to live. If people don't want to live, I can't do much for them. Your little lady has decided that she's not going to get well. Is there something that is troubling her?" "She always wanted to go to Italy and paint a picture of the Bay of Naples," said Sue. "Paint, not paint. Is there anything worth being troubled about? A man?" A man?" said Sue. Is a man worth... "No, doctor, there is not a man." "It is a weakness," said the doctor. "I'll do all I know how to do, but when a sick person begins to feel he's going to die, half of my work is useless. Talk to her about new winter clothes. If she were interested in the future, her chances would be better." After the doctor had gone, Sue went into the workroom to cry. Then she walked into Johnsy's room. She carried some of her painting materials, and she was singing. Johnsy lay there, very thin and very quiet. Her face was turned toward the window. Sue stopped singing, thinking that Johnsy was asleep. Sue began to work. As she worked, she heard a low sound again and again. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnsy's eyes were wide open. She was looking out the window and counting back. 12, she said, and a little later, 11, and then 10, and 9, and then 8, and 7, almost together. Sue looked out the window. What was there to count? There was only the side wall of the next house, a short distance away. The wall had no window. An old tree grew against the wall. The cold breath of winter had already touched it. Almost all its leaves had fallen from its dark branches. "What is it, dear?" asked Sue. "6," said Johnsy, in a voice still lower. "They're falling faster now. 3 days ago, there were almost 100. It hurt my head to count them, but now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 now." "5 what, dear? Tell your Sue." "Leaves on the tree. When the last one falls, I must go too. I've known that for 3 days. Didn't the doctor tell you?" "Oh, I never heard of such a thing," said Sue. "It doesn't have any sense in it. What does an old tree have to do with you or with your getting well? You used to love that tree so much. Don't be a little fool. The doctor told me your chances for getting well. He told me this morning. He said you have very good chances. Try to eat a little now, and I'll go back to work, and then I can sell my picture, and then I can buy something more for you to eat and make you strong." "You don't have to buy anything for me," said Johnsy. She still looked out the window. "There goes another. No, I don't want anything to eat. Now there are 4. I want to see the last one fall before night. Then I'll go too." "Johnsy, dear," said Sue, "will you promise me to close your eyes and keep them closed? Will you promise not to look out the window until I finish working? I must have this picture ready tomorrow. I need the light. I can't cover the window." "Could you work in the other room?" asked Johnsy coldly. "I'd rather be here by you," said Sue, and I don't want you to look at those leaves." "Tell me as soon as you have it finished," said Johnsy. She closed her eyes and lay white and still. "Because I want to see the last leaf fall. I've done enough waiting. I've done enough thinking. I want to go sailing down, like one of those leaves." "Try to sleep," said Sue. "I must call Berman to come up here. I want to paint a man in this picture, and I'll make him look like Berman. I won't be gone a minute. Just don't try to move until I come back, okay?" Old Berman was a painter who lived on the first floor of their house. He was past 60. He had had no success as a painter. For 40 years he had painted without ever painting a good picture. He had always talked of painting a great picture, a masterpiece, but he had never yet started it. He got a little money by letting others paint pictures of him. He drank too much. He still talked of his great masterpiece, and he believed that it was his special duty to do everything possible to help Sue and Johnsy. Sue found him in his dark room, and she knew that he had been drinking. She could smell it. She told him about Johnsy and the leaves on the vine. She said that she was afraid that Johnsy would indeed sail down like the leaf. Her hold on the world was growing weaker. Old Berman shouted with anger over an idea. "What?" he cried. "Are there such fools? Do people die because leaves drop off a tree? I've never heard of such a thing. No, I will not come up and sit while you make a picture of me. Why do you allow her to think of such a thing, a poor little Johnsy?" She's very sick and weak," said Sue. The sickness has put these strange ideas into her mind. "Mr. Berman, if you won't come, you won't. But I don't think you're very nice.
Oh, this is just like a woman, shouted Berman. Who said I'll not come? Go, I'll come with you for half an hour now. I've been trying to say that I'll come. God, this isn't any place for someone so good as Johnsy to lie sick. Someday I shall finish my masterpiece and we shall all go away from here. God, yes.
Johnsy was sleeping when they went up. Sue covered the window and took Berman into the other room. There, they looked out the window fearfully at the tree. Then they looked at each other for a moment without speaking. A cold rain was falling, with a little snow in it, too. Berman sat down and Sue began to paint. She worked through most of the night. In the morning, after an hour's sleep, she went to Johnsy's bed. Johnsy, with wide open eyes, was looking toward the window. I want to see, she told Sue. Sue took the cover from the window. But after the beating rain and the wild wind that had not stopped through the whole night, there was still one leaf to be seen against the wall. It was the last on the tree. It was still dark green near the branch, but at the edges, it was turning yellow with age. There it was, hanging from a branch, nearly 20 feet above the ground. It is the last one, said Johnsy. I thought it would surely fall during the night. I heard the wind. It'll fall today, and I shall die at the same time.
Oh, dear Johnsy, said Sue. Think of me if you won't think of yourself. What would I do?
But Johnsy did not answer. The most lonely thing in the world is a soul when it is preparing to go on its far journey. The ties that held her to friendship and to earth were breaking, one by one. The day slowly passed. As it grew dark, they could still see the leaf hanging from its branch against the wall. And then, as the night came, the north wind again began to blow. The rain still beat against the windows. When it was light enough the next morning, Johnsy again commanded that she be allowed to see. The leaf was still there. Johnsy lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue, who was cooking something for her to eat. I've been a bad girl, said Johnsy. Something has made that last leaf stay there to show me how bad I was. It's wrong to want to die. I'll try to eat now. But first, bring me a looking glass so that I can see myself, and then I'll sit up and watch you cook. An hour later, she said, Sue, someday I hope to paint the Bay of Naples. The doctor came in the afternoon. Sue followed him into the hall outside Johnsy's room to talk to him. The chances are good, said the doctor. He took Sue's thin, shaking hand in his. Give her good care, and she'll get well. And now, I must see another sick person in this house. His name's Berman, a painter, I believe. Pneumonia, too. Mike is an old, weak man, and he's very ill. There's no hope for him, but we can take him to the hospital today. We'll make it as easy for him as we can. The next day, the doctor said to Sue, She's safe. You've done it. Food and care now. That's all. And that afternoon, Sue came to the bed where Johnsy lay. She put one arm around her. I have something to tell you, she said. Mr. Berman died of pneumonia today in the hospital. He was ill only 2 days. Someone found him on the morning of the first day in his room. He was helpless with pain. His shoes and his clothes were wet and cold as ice. Everyone wondered where he had been. The night had been so cold and wild, and then they found some things. There was a light that he had taken outside, and there were his materials for painting. There was paint, green paint and yellow paint, and look out the window, dear, at the last leaf on the wall. Didn't you wonder why it never moved when the wind was blowing? Oh my! Oh dear! It's Berman's great masterpiece. He painted it there. He painted it there that night that the last leaf fell. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Fireside Tales with Wolfgang. To view more of my work, check out my YouTube channel at Hunter's Acoustic Cabin. Directed by Hunter Ackerman. Endorsed by Wolfgang Beastly. Produced by GWC Productions. Originally broadcast on GWC Productions' YouTube channel, CAPS Media Television Channel 6, KPPQ LP Ventura at 104.1 FM, and on the KPPQ Podcast Network.